Have you ever had one of those moments that feels almost too precise to be a coincidence? You think of a friend you haven't spoken to in years, and suddenly your phone lights up with their name. You keep seeing the same repeating number on license plates, receipts, and clocks, to the point where it feels like reality itself is trying to get your attention. Or maybe you stumble upon an opportunity that seems to arrive at the exact second you needed it, even though logically it makes no sense. These are the little shocks of recognition that stop you in your tracks. People call them synchronicities. Carl Jung, the grandfather of depth psychology, named the phenomenon meaningful coincidence. But even Jung admitted that synchronicity seemed to break the rules of how we think reality should work. How could two events with no causal connection line up so perfectly that they create a sense of divine timing? Science, rooted in neat cause and effect stories, calls it improbable. And yet, at the level that matters, that those moments carry weight. They feel like a whisper from something larger. To make sense of these moments, imagine reality not as a straight line, but as a field of possibility. In that field, everything that could happen exists as a potential. Only when attention lands does one of those potentials collapse into the reality you experience. In that sense, synchronicities are previews. They are the shadow of a future that's already forming, a shadow that appears before the object steps fully into the light. Think of a shadow on a wall. The object casting it may not be visible yet, but the shadow tells you its shape, size, orientation. Synchronicities are shadows of your quantum reality, early signals of a timeline that's starting to align with you. They are not illusions or tricks. They are echoes from the edge of perception, vibrating in ways our ordinary senses can sometimes pick up. But most people mishandle these signals. There are two common mistakes. The first is dismissal, brushing synchronicities off as mere coincidence, then missing the invitation they carry. The second is desperation, clinging to every sign and turning life into superstition. Both reactions are forms of misalignment because they either ignore or fetishize the breadcrumb instead of following it into the meal. So why do synchronicities happen at all? To answer that, we need both science and spirit. Neuroscience has taught us that your brain is a prediction machine. It filters an avalanche of sensory data into what matters for your goals and expectations. When you tune to a particular frequency, abundance, love, healing, your brain begins to highlight information that matches that tuning. You notice what you're already aligned with. That explains part of the experience. You see repeating numbers because your attention is primed to notice them. But notice is only half the story. The deeper truth is that the brain doesn't simply passively catalog events. It participates in a larger field. Quantum physics suggests reality isn't a fixed chain of cause and effect, but a tapestry of probabilities. In this tapestry, observation and resonance influence which possibilities collapse into actuality. When your inner state coheres around a possibility, it begins to leak into your lived experience as a series of matching external events, the synchronicities. This is where Jung's insight becomes a bridge. He proposed meaning as a kind of causal link. Events can be connected not by physical cause, but by shared significance. Modern physics and neuroscience now give us language to describe how that could work. Entanglement, observer effects, predictive brains, different disciplines converging on the same mysterious fact. When you're vibrating in tune with a particular scenario, a non-local connection forms between your internal state and corresponding external patterns. That's why you think of someone and they call, why you wake with an idea that shows up as a conversation later that day. The link is not witch's magic, it's coherence. Coherence is the operative word here. Imagine your mind, heart, and body as instruments in an orchestra. When they're out of tune, the sound is messy and fragmented. But when they come into alignment, the resonance carries far beyond the instruments themselves. The quantum field responds to that harmony by reflecting it back to you. Synchronicities are the field's way of saying, yes, you're in tune, keep going. This is also why fear and gratitude produce different worlds. People who live from a place of fear frequently notice fearful patterns because their nervous system is scanning for threat. Those who move from gratitude and openness see opportunities and blessings because their internal state highlights those possibilities. It's not magical thinking, it's resonance. There's a practical danger in misreading the signs. Some treat synchronicity like a magic test. Miss one and you've failed. Others collect signs like proof, tokens that must be gathered to validate their worth. Both responses trap you outside the process. Synchronicities are feedback, not a scoreboard. They're mirrors, not mandates. If the signs stop, it doesn't mean you've been punished. It means you need to retune. When a synchronicity appears, the most powerful response isn't frantic interpretation. It's pause. Breathe. Notice the internal state that produced the event. Ask, without drama, what inside of me is being mirrored here? That simple inquiry turns the sign from a curiosity into a navigational instrument. It shifts you from passive decoder to active participant. There's a beautiful paradox here. The more you chase signs, the less reliable they become. The more you embody the state the signs point to, gratitude, clarity, courage, the less you need signs at all. Synchronicity evolves from sporadic wink to steady atmosphere. You stop scanning the world for clues and start being the signal that shapes the world. Stay with me. In the next part, I'll show you the deeper mechanics behind synchronicity, not just Jung's poetic intuition, but the specific quantum and neurological principles that explain why these meaningful coincidences line up for some people and not others, and why they always point toward the reality you're already beginning to inhabit. To understand synchronicity at a deeper level, we need to step away from the old Newtonian worldview, the one that says reality's like a machine, with every effect having a clear, measurable cause. In that framework, coincidences are meaningless. One domino knocks over the next, and the chain is predictable. A thought has no business shaping the external world. By that logic, synchronicity should not exist. But then came quantum mechanics, and suddenly, the foundation cracked. In quantum physics, the building blocks of reality don't behave like little billiard balls bouncing around. Instead, they behave like waves of probability. A particle isn't just in one place. It exists in many places at once, until it is observed. Only in the act of measurement does the particle decide where it will land. This is the observer effect, one of the most radical discoveries in modern science. It tells us something shocking. The simple act of noticing shapes what becomes real. Think about that. Reality is not just out there, operating independently of you. Your attention itself is a creative force. Now apply this to synchronicity. The reason events sometimes line up in impossible ways isn't random chance, it's resonance. Your consciousness has tuned itself to a particular probability wave in the quantum field. When you notice it, when you give it awareness, that wave collapses into form. Suddenly, the impossible becomes your lived experience. But there's more. The observer effect explains one side of the equation. The other comes from something even stranger: quantum entanglement. Entanglement happens when two particles become connected in such a way that what happens to one instantly affects the other, no matter the distance. Change one particle in New York, and the other, even if it's across the galaxy, will respond. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance because it seemed to break every law of physics he knew. But experiments have repeatedly confirmed entanglement. It's real. Now imagine your thoughts, emotions, and intentions as entangled with the field of life itself. When you think of someone and they call, when you dream of an opportunity and it arrives the next day, what if these weren't random accidents, but evidence of entanglement playing out in your everyday reality? Jung sensed this long before physics had the language for it. He suggested that events could be connected by meaning rather than by cause. And today, neuroscience has started to back him up.
Our subconscious filters billions of data points every second, allowing only a fraction into conscious awareness. But when we enter states of coherence, through meditation, intention, or heightened emotion, those filters loosen. Suddenly, you perceive connections that were always there, but hidden beneath the noise. That's why synchronicities often cluster during times of transformation. Your nervous system is tuning differently. The filters are shifting, and what once seemed invisible becomes undeniable. Here's the key. Synchronicity is most powerful when your internal state is coherent. Coherence means your thoughts, emotions, and physical body are aligned. Imagine again the orchestra. When instruments are out of tune, the sound is jarring. When they harmonize, the resonance can carry across miles. Your body works the same way. When your heart, brain, and nervous system are in harmony, the signal you broadcast into the field is strong. And the field responds with precision, reflecting that harmony back as synchronicities. This is why repeating numbers, overheard phrases, and perfectly timed opportunities are not random surface events. They are echoes. They're your shadow reality brushing against the edges of your present one. They whisper, "It's already here. Step into it." But there's a trap. Many people stop at the sign. They see 11:11 on the clock, smile, and treat it like the miracle itself. But the number is not the miracle. It's the signal. Just like a compass is not the destination, a synchronicity is not the manifestation. If you stop at the shadow, you never meet the object. Another misstep is treating synchronicities as tests. People think, if I miss this sign, I failed. If I don't decode it correctly, the universe will pass me by. But that thinking is rooted in fear, and fear scrambles coherence. Synchronicities aren't exams, they're feedback. They tell you simply where your frequency is. If they fade, it doesn't mean you're cursed. It means you're temporarily out of tune. And here's where the real shift happens. When you begin to engage with synchronicities consciously, they stop being curiosities and become navigational tools. Instead of brushing them off, you pause, you breathe. You ask yourself, what is this moment reflecting about my inner state? What reality is brushing against me, asking to be embodied? That small act transforms the experience. You are no longer a passive observer of coincidences. You are an active participant in a dialogue with reality. Think of synchronicity as the language of the universe. It doesn't speak to your logical mind in sentences. It speaks to your energy, your intuition, your deeper self. The more fluent you become in that language, the more you understand coherence, entanglement, and resonance, the more you see synchronicity not as superstition, but as physics, not as chance, but as consciousness in action. This is why people who embody gratitude, trust, and openness seem to live in a stream of synchronicities. They are fluent in the language. They are tuned to the dialogue. But the real breakthrough is this. Synchronicity is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning. It's not the prize. It's the breadcrumb trail. It's the universe saying, keep going. You're aligned. In the next part, we're going to go even deeper into the practical side. Because if synchronicity is the shadow of your quantum reality, how do you step out of the shadow and into full embodiment? How do you stop waiting for previews and start living the main event? The answer lies in a shift so simple, yet so profound, it can transform synchronicity from mystery into mastery. By now, you have seen synchronicity for what it truly is, not random luck, not superstition, but a resonance between your consciousness and a quantum field, a preview, a reflection, a whisper from a parallel version of you that already exists. But here is the crucial part.
Synchronicity is not the end goal. It is the invitation. Think of it like standing at the edge of a doorway. The signs, numbers, and perfectly timed encounters are the light spilling from the room beyond. You can either admire the light from where you stand, or you can step forward and walk into the room itself. The question is, how? First, recognizing the shadow reality. When you experience a synchronicity, you're brushing against a reality that is already formed in the quantum field. That is why it feels so precise, so tailored, because it is. It is not random. It is a preview of alignment. Imagine holding your hand near a projector beam. You see the shadow, but not the object itself. The shadow proves the object exists, but unless you step around, you will never touch it. The mistake most people make is worshiping the shadow. They see repeating numbers and stop there. They meet someone by chance and label it destiny, but never follow through. The synchronicity was meant to point them forward, but they stay stuck at the signpost. To move forward, you must ask, what reality is this synchronicity pointing me toward? What action am I being invited to take? Because synchronicities without action dissolve back into the field. They are like windows, open for a moment, then gone. Second, collapse through coherence. The quantum field contains infinite probabilities, but probabilities do not become lived reality until they collapse. What collapses them? Conscious attention fused with emotional coherence. This is why synchronicities multiply when you are in states of gratitude, joy, or flow. These emotions create harmony between your heart and brain. They generate measurable coherence in your electromagnetic field, and coherence acts like a tuning fork. It pulls potential realities out of the quantum soup and into tangible form. When you see a synchronicity, pause. Instead of brushing it off, breathe into coherence. Slow your breath. Feel gratitude, even if just for the sign itself. Envision the version of reality it is pointing toward. In that moment, you are not just witnessing the shadow. You are energizing the object. You are collapsing possibility into form. Third, action as alignment. But coherence alone is not enough. The universe speaks in resonance, but it also responds to movement. Action is the bridge. Think of it like music. The sheet notes exist. The orchestra is tuned. But someone has to lift the bow across the string to make sound. That motion is what gives life to the symphony. So when synchronicity appears, ask, what step aligns me with this? Then take it. Even a small step, a message sent, a call returned, a journal entry written. Every action sends a signal back into the field. I am ready to embody this frequency. Without action, synchronicities remain curiosities. With action, they become catalysts. Fourth, trusting the flow. Here is where many people struggle. Fear of misinterpretation. They worry, what if I am reading the sign wrong? What if I follow it and it leads nowhere? But remember, synchronicities are not rigid instructions. They are mirrors of resonance. Even if the outcome is not what your mind expected, the act of following the sign strengthens your coherence. It deepens your dialogue with reality. And over time, that trust builds momentum. Life is not testing you. It is training you. Every synchronicity is like a weight at the gym. You do not fail if you cannot lift it perfectly. You grow stronger simply by engaging. Fifth, embodiment over expectation. One of the biggest blocks to manifestation is clinging too tightly to outcomes. When you demand that synchronicities mean this specific thing in this exact way, you collapse the field prematurely. You force a narrow path, and in doing so, you cut yourself off from the broader intelligence that might be guiding you. Instead, shift from expectation to embodiment. Ask not, what does this sign guarantee, but rather, what state of being is this sign reflecting back to me, and how can I embody that state now? If you see repeating numbers during moments of calm, embody calm more often. If you meet aligned people when you're open-hearted, embody openness more consistently. The external sign is just the echo. The embodiment is the source. Sixth, living in the dialogue. Ultimately, synchronicity becomes less about isolated events and more about living in a state of ongoing dialogue with reality. The signs do not stop. They weave into the fabric of your daily life. At that point, synchronicity is no longer a surprise. It's a lifestyle, a natural byproduct of alignment. Imagine waking each day knowing you are not stumbling blindly, but walking a path where the universe is constantly whispering back, adjusting your course, confirming your frequency. That is the shift from shadow to substance, from hints to embodiment, from wonder to mastery. And here's the deeper truth. The universe is not showing you these signs to tease you. It is preparing you, preparing your nervous system, your mindset, your energy, so that when the reality fully arrives, you can hold it. Because sometimes the worst thing is not that your dream has not come true. The worst thing is when it does come true and you are not yet expanded enough to sustain it. Synchronicities are the gentle stretching before the leap. They are the previews that strengthen your coherence so the full movie doesn't overwhelm you. In the next part, we will take this from the personal to the universal, because synchronicity is not just about you manifesting your dream life, it's about humanity itself evolving into a new way of living, where meaning replaces randomness, and consciousness reshapes the story of reality. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. What synchronicities have been showing up in your life lately? Comment the word aligned below if you are ready to move from shadow to substance.
Up to now, we have explored synchronicity on the personal level. The numbers, the encounters, the whispers of alignment that shape your individual path. But what if I told you, synchronicity is not just about you. It is also about us, about humanity itself, about the story we are collectively living and where it is headed. Because just as individuals experience alignment, entire cultures and civilizations do too. Think of history. Great movements often begin with small, seemingly random sparks, a chance meeting between thinkers, a book falling into the right hands, an invention discovered at the exact moment it was needed. From the outside, it looks like coincidence, but from the inside, you can feel the deeper current pulling events together. That is synchronicity on a collective scale. Right now, humanity is standing at such a threshold. The old worldview of separation, randomness, and mechanical cause and effect is breaking down. In its place, a new paradigm is emerging, one where meaning, connection, and consciousness take center stage. The explosion of synchronicity people report today is not an accident. It is part of the shift. It is the universe itself reflecting back the state of collective transformation. Imagine every human being as a node in an enormous web. Each thought, each emotion, each intention sends ripples across the strands. When enough nodes pulse in harmony, the entire web resonates. This is why when global events shake the world, synchronicities multiply. The field becomes charged, consciousness begins to sync up, people around the globe dream similar dreams, sense similar shifts, and experience parallel awakenings. What you experience personally as a string of uncanny coincidences is also happening collectively. It is as if reality itself is tightening the weave, pulling the separate threads into a more coherent pattern. Biologists once believed evolution was slow and mechanical, small changes building up over millions of years, but now we know that evolution also happens in leaps, in sudden quantum jumps when the system reaches a tipping point. Synchronicity is one of those tipping point signals. It is a sign that the system is ready to evolve, that a new form of order is trying to emerge. For individuals, that new order is alignment with your higher self. For humanity, it is alignment with a higher level of collective consciousness. The old worldview told us life was meaningless, that we are accidents of chemistry floating on a rock in space, that coincidences are just math playing tricks on us. But synchronicity cracks that story wide open. It whispers that life is not random, that there is a pattern beneath the chaos, that meaning is woven into the very fabric of existence. When you start living by synchronicity, you stop being a passive consumer of reality. You become a co-author. And when enough people make that shift, the story of humanity itself changes. But with this realization comes responsibility. Because awareness is power. Once you know that your thoughts, emotions, and coherence shape the field, you can no longer pretend you are powerless. Every moment you choose coherence or chaos, trust or fear, you are not just shaping your personal reality. You are adding to the collective field. You are strengthening or weakening the web. This is why practices like meditation, gratitude, and heart coherence are not just personal growth tools. They are evolutionary tools. Every time you align, you make it easier for the next person to align. Every time you embody synchronicity, you help weave the larger pattern into form. Imagine a world where decisions are not driven by fear or scarcity, but by alignment. Where leaders trust intuition as much as data. Where communities follow signs of coherence rather than chasing endless competition. In such a world, synchronicity would not be dismissed as superstition. It would be recognized as guidance, as feedback from the living universe, as proof that consciousness and reality are inseparable. And maybe this is the true destiny of synchronicity. Not to give us goosebumps with perfect timing, not to make us feel special when we see 11:11 on the clock, but to train us, to guide us toward a future where humanity finally remembers it is part of a larger whole. So the question is, what role will you play in that shift? Will you keep brushing against shadows, smiling at the signs but never stepping through? Or will you choose embodiment? Will you act? Will you become a living node of coherence in the great web? Because synchronicity is not here to entertain you. It is here to prepare you for your future, for our future, for a new way of being human. The signs are everywhere. The question is, will you listen? If this message resonates with you, if you are ready to live not just in the shadow of synchronicity, but in the substance of alignment, let me know in the comments. Comment the word quantum so I know you are walking through the doorway with me. And remember, this is only the beginning. Stay aligned, stay aware, and stay open to the dialogue with reality, because the universe is speaking, and you are the one it has been waiting for.